Moving on to thing number two, Gary, the Atlanta Fed lowers GDP forecast by a lot.
I cannot wait till Andrew throws up the graph on this one because if you find financial graphs funny, if you find them entertaining, this graph is about as funny as it gets. So the Atlanta Fed, they have this metric they use. It's called GDPNow, where they estimate where they think GDP is going to be. And they took their estimate from a little over 4%, I think around 4.1, 4.2%. And all of a sudden, a month later, they lowered it to 1.8%. Right? That's a 60% cut in their expectations for GDP growth. What in the world happened here? And then, the whole thing gets even funnier because it's not in the graph we have here. But as I was writing this, the Atlanta Fed then revised their projections again. And now they're saying something more than 3%. So they went from like 4.1% to 1.8. Now they're above 3. One might conclude that they're just randomly pulling numbers out of the air. The graph looks like a little kid scribbling. So, yeah, I don't think anyone there knows what they're doing.
With their initial expected GDP growth in excess of 4%, I think the question, yeah, what data might they be looking at? How do they even get to that particular number? And then, I mean, what would even need to happen in terms of that actually coming to fruition?
I don't know. I don't know what data they're looking at, but what I do know is, the economy here in the United States is almost $30 trillion a year. Um, there's an old expression about, trying to turn around an ocean liner, right? It's not a speedboat. To change the direction of an economy as large as the US economy takes time. It doesn't happen quickly. And so, to go from 4% growth to 1.8% growth, like what I have no idea what data they're looking at that would cause them to change that much. But 2% of 28 trillion is itself a really big number. Um, one of the things we pointed out, and intern Andrew Brown did a great job in pulling together these graphs. We had them up in from our monthly letter a couple of months ago. But what we did was we figured out that the Federal Reserve is unable to predict the Fed funds rate 12 months out, even though they control it and they have more data on the economy than anybody else. So the people who have the most data and control of a number literally can't predict where the number is going to be in a year. The Atlanta Fed is not able to predict, GDP, their GDPNow estimate. The only conclusion I can come to is the government is terrible at projecting anything and the private market economy is struggling. The reason that I believe we're not going to hit an official recession is because of governmental spending. Again, I make this point every week, but nobody in government, either party, I'm not blaming one party for it. Neither party, nobody wants to run for reelection with the economy in a recession. And so they're going to basically fund higher and higher deficits with inflation. We should expect more inflation coming, but nominally high GDP numbers. And the issue with that is we're going to have a GDP number showing growth because of government spending, which is not investment. It's all consumption being pulled forward, and a weaker private market economy. And they're going to say, hey, look, but we have GDP growth. So basically, Congress can make the Atlanta Fed right about whatever number they want. It just depends how much they're willing to spend.